The desolate red expanse of Avaris Omega stretched before Maris Vale as she gazed through the reinforced viewing panel of Zenora Prime Research Station. Lifeless stone formations punctuated the crimson landscape, their jagged silhouettes casting long shadows in the planet's weak sunlight. 6 months stationed on this barren rock, and the human xenobiologist still hadn't grown accustomed to the eerie emptiness that permeated every aspect of the planet. Another riveting day cataloging non-existent indigenous species? The voice belonged to Zrin, the Metri security officer, whose sleek, silver-scaled body moved with fluid precision as he approached. His species' pragmatic nature was evident in every calculated movement. Maris smiled wryly. The Galactic Alliance wouldn't fund a harmless research system if they thought there was anything interesting to find. That's why we're here, because there's nothing to see. Precisely as regulations dictate, Zrin replied. No indigenous predators equals optimal research conditions. The year was 3274, humanity having long since joined the interstellar community. Zenora Prime served as one of many outposts established by the Galactic Alliance for studying extraterrestrial biology, specifically the safe variety. Located in a narrow valley 20 kilometers from the K-17 mining facility, the station's silvery circular structure stood as a testament to the Alliance's commitment to controlled scientific advancement. Dr. Vale. The communication panel chimed with the soft-spoken voice of Tamal, the Aruvian biologist whose translucent blue skin betrayed the rapid circulation of fluid beneath, a sign of excitement among his species. You're needed in the command center. We've received an unusual transmission from the mining facility. Maris's heart quickened. After months of tedium, even a minor deviation from routine felt monumental. She hurried through the sterile corridors of the station, passing the Xeno-engineering bay, where Kal Tor, the station's dray engineer, was calibrating equipment with his 4 nimble appendages. The reptilian dray acknowledged her with a brief nod, his scaled face revealing nothing of his thoughts. The command center buzzed with unusual activity. Surveillance feeds displayed imagery from K-17, where a team of miners stood at the edge of what appeared to be a massive excavation pit. 7 meters deep, Tamal explained, his delicate fingers manipulating the holographic display. They were conducting seismic testing when they discovered something unexpected. The footage zoomed in, revealing a dark mass at the bottom of the pit. Something moved. "It's alive," Maris whispered, leaning closer. "And large," Zrin added, mandibles clicking in what Maris had learned to recognize as concern. Preliminary scans suggest a xenofauna specimen approximately 3 meters in height. No match in our database. "How is that possible?" Maris asked. Alliance surveys confirmed no large predators on Avaris Omega. "Smugglers," Tamal suggested. "The black market for exotic creatures thrives despite regulations. Perhaps it escaped during transport." Maris studied the grainy footage. The creature appeared severely injured, its movements labored and erratic. "It's suffering," she observed, a familiar pang of compassion rising within her. "We need to help it." Zrin's posture stiffened. "Alliance protocol is clear. Dr. Vale, unidentified potentially dangerous xenofauna must be reported and terminated, particularly when found outside designated conservation zones." "We're scientists, not executioners," Maris countered, her voice rising. "This creature is injured and trapped. We have an obligation to study and understand it, not destroy it based on fear." "I must agree with Zrin," Tamal interjected, his bioluminescent patterns flashing with concern. "Without proper identification, we cannot assess the risk. The protocols exist for a reason." Maris looked between her colleagues, then back at the suffering creature. Throughout her career, she had challenged the Alliance's rigid classification of life forms as either safe or dangerous. This moment would test her principles. "I'm assembling a rescue team," she declared. "We'll sedate the creature, assess its injuries, and bring it back for study in a secure containment cell. If it proves too dangerous, we can reevaluate." "This exceeds our mandate," Zrin warned. "Our mandate is to study xenofauna," Maris replied firmly. "That's exactly what I intend to do." Within an hour, Maris had assembled her team. Herself, Zrin, who refused to let her go without security, and 2 additional staff, another Metri security officer, and a Dre engineer. They loaded a transport vehicle with sedatives, reinforced cables, and portable medical equipment. The journey to K-17 was tense, the red dust of Avaris Omega swirling around their vehicle as they navigated the rocky terrain. "This is unwise," Zrin said for perhaps the 5th time. "Apex predators have evolutionary advantages that make them supremely dangerous, even when injured." "You don't know it's a predator," Maris countered. "Those movement patterns, the physical structure visible in the footage, classic predatory adaptations," Zrin insisted. "Your human empathy creates a blind spot. Dr. Vale, sometimes compassion leads to catastrophe, and sometimes it leads to breakthrough discoveries," she replied. "Not everything is about survival advantages, Zrin. Sometimes it's about making the right choice, even when it's difficult." They arrived at the mining facility as Avaris Omega's sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. The miners had cordoned off the area around the pit, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension as Maris's team approached. "It's been growling all morning," the site foreman informed them. "Nearly took off Jenks's arm when he tried to lower some water. Whatever it is, it's not friendly." Maris peered over the edge of the pit. The creature was curled in a defensive posture, but she could make out 6 limbs, ending in what appeared to be razor-sharp claws. Its skin was midnight black, absorbing rather than reflecting the dim light. But what caught her attention most were its eyes, intelligent, calculating, and filled with pain. "Ancient Vorax," she breathed, recognition dawning. "I've only seen preserved specimens in Alliance archives." "Vorax," Zrin's mandibles clicked rapidly. "The apex predator from the Cygnus sector? Extinct for 3 centuries? "Supposedly extinct," Maris corrected. "This changes everything. We're not just saving an animal. We're preserving a species thought lost to the galaxy." The team worked quickly, constructing a pulley system to lower Maris into the pit with a sedative formulated for large, predatory species. Zrin insisted on a safety harness that could rapidly pull her out if the creature attacked. "Remember," the Metri warned, "it only needs one opportunity to kill you. You'll have none to correct a mistake." Maris nodded, heart pounding as she was lowered into the pit. The Vorax growled, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through her bones. Its 6 limbs tensed, claws digging into the rocky soil. "I'm not here to hurt you," Maris said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words, but hoping her tone might convey her intentions. She readied the sedative injector, calculating the optimal injection site based on what little was known of Vorax physiology. The creature lunged suddenly, faster than Maris anticipated. She jerked back, nearly dropping the injector. The Vorax snapped massive jaws, missing her by centimeters. Above, Zrin shouted something, preparing to activate the emergency retrieval. "Wait," Maris called up. "I'm okay." She studied the Vorax more carefully. Despite its aggressive display, it hadn't pursued her. Its hind leg was clearly broken, and deep lacerations crossed its torso. The creature was terrified and in pain, its attacks born of desperation rather than malice. Moving with deliberate slowness, Maris approached again. "Easy," she murmured. "I know you're scared. I know you're hurting. Let me help you." The Vorax growled, but didn't lunge. Maris inched closer, injector ready. In one swift motion, she pressed it against what she hoped was a major blood vessel and triggered the mechanism. The Vorax roared, swiping at her with claws that could have severed her in half. Maris stumbled backward, falling onto the hard ground as the creature advanced on her, seemingly unaffected by the sedative. Her mind raced. Had she miscalculated the dosage? Used the wrong compound for this species? She scrambled backward as the Vorax took another step toward her. Then it swayed, its movements becoming uncoordinated. Powerful muscles trembled as the sedative began to take effect. The creature fought against it, each step becoming more labored until, finally, it collapsed. Its eyes, still alert, still intelligent, remained fixed on Maris until they too surrendered to the chemical. "It's down!" she called up. "Begin extraction!" The next hour passed in a blur of activity. The team carefully secured the unconscious Vorax in a reinforced transport sling, attaching it to the pulley system. The winch strained against the creature's weight as they slowly raised it from the pit. Maris monitored its vital signs, administering additional sedative when necessary to ensure it remained unconscious throughout the journey back to Zenora Prime. They arrived at the research station after nightfall, transferring the Vorax to a temporary containment cell. Maris immediately began treatment of its injuries, working through the night to set the broken leg and close the lacerations that marred its obsidian skin. "I'm calling it Rock," she informed Tamal, who had reluctantly agreed to assist her. "It means survivor in an old Earth language." "You're naming it?" Tamal's bioluminescent patterns flickered with disapproval. "Dr. Vale, this isn't a companion animal. It's a highly evolved killing machine." "It's a living being," Maris countered, "and it deserves our respect." Over the following weeks, Maris devoted herself to Rock's recovery. The Vorax's remarkable healing abilities accelerated the process, but it was Maris's constant attention that truly made the difference. She monitored its diet, adjusted its medication, and spent hours observing its behavior. To her colleagues' surprise, Rock displayed none of the uncontrollable aggression documented in historical accounts of the species. "It's calculating," Zrin observed one day, watching as Rack systematically examined its containment cell. "Look at how it studies the ventilation ducts, the seams in the door. It's searching for weaknesses." "It's curious," Maris corrected. "Intelligence manifests in many forms, including exploration of environment." "Or escape planning," Zrin countered. "Don't mistake adaptation for affection. Dr. Vale, that creature isn't becoming tame. It's learning about its captors." Maris couldn't entirely dismiss Zrin's concerns. Rock's piercing gaze followed her movements with unnerving intensity. Yet, there was something else there too, a recognition, perhaps even a connection. When she approached its cell, it no longer growled or displayed aggression. Instead, it would move closer to the transparent barrier, observing her with what she could only describe as interest. Unknown to the Zenora Prime team, news of their unusual specimen had traveled beyond the isolated research station. In the shadowy corners of interstellar commerce, information was currency, and the existence of a living Vorax represented incalculable value. The Corisian Raiders, a notorious group of mercenaries specializing in rare biological acquisitions, had intercepted communications about the creature. Their leader, Captain Arxis Moda, saw an opportunity too valuable to ignore. "A living Vorax would fetch billions on the black market," he told his crew as their ship entered the Avari system. Collectors, weapons developers, genetic engineers, they'd all pay handsomely for such a specimen. And a remote research station with minimal security? It's practically being offered to us. The attack came during third shift, when the station operated with minimal staffing. The raiders breached the outer hull with precision explosives, neutralizing the communications array before an alert could be transmitted. Alarms blared throughout the station as emergency protocols engaged, sealing compartments and activating defense systems. Maris had been working late in the biolab, analyzing tissue samples from Rock, when the first explosion rocked the station. The automated security system immediately sealed all compartments, including the lab where she worked and Rock's nearby containment cell. Through the reinforced glass, she could see the Vorax suddenly alert, its powerful body tense with awareness. Security breach in Sectors 3 through 7, the station's AI announced. All personnel initiate emergency protocol Sigma 9. Maris tried to access the communication panel, but the systems were offline. She was trapped in the lab, cut off from the rest of the station. Through the sealed doorway, she could hear the sounds of weapon fire and shouting. The raiders were getting closer. In his containment cell, Rock growled, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate through the very structure of the station. The Vorax's eyes fixed on the corridor beyond the lab, ears pivoting toward the approaching intruders. With a sudden, explosive movement, it lunged against the restraint field that had been established as a secondary precaution. The energy barrier flickered, but held. Maris watched in astonishment as Rock repeated the maneuver, targeting the same point in the field with each powerful impact. On the fourth attempt, something sparked in the containment system. The field fluctuated, weakened by the precisely targeted assaults. With a final, tremendous effort, Rock broke through, shattering the energy barrier and gaining access to the outer chamber of its cell. The door to the biolab burst open. 3 armed figures in Corisian combat armor stormed in, weapons trained on Maris. "Where is the specimen?" demanded their leader, a cybernetically enhanced humanoid whose facial features were obscured by an elaborate targeting system. "Tell us now, and you might survive this." Maris backed away, her eyes darting toward the containment cell. The raiders followed her gaze, just in time to see Rack tear through the reinforced door as if it were paper. The Vorax stood fully upright for the first time since its rescue, its massive form dominating the laboratory. In the artificial lighting, its midnight skin gleamed with an almost metallic quality, muscles rippling beneath as it surveyed the intruders. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then the lead raider raised his weapon. Rock moved with impossible speed. Before the weapon could discharge, the Vorax had crossed the distance between them, 6 limbs working in perfect coordination as it launched itself at the attackers. Claws tore through combat armor, finding the vulnerable points with uncanny precision. The raiders fired wildly, energy bolts scorching the laboratory walls as Rock ducked and weaved with fluid grace. Maris pressed herself against the far wall, frozen in shock as the Vorax systematically dismantled 3 armed combatants in seconds. Blood spattered across the pristine lab surfaces. The lead raider screamed as Rock's jaws closed around his cybernetic arm, crushing the advanced technology into useless fragments. "Fall back," he shouted to his companions. "Full assault protocol!" The surviving raiders retreated, sealing the laboratory door behind them. Through the reinforced viewport, Maris could see them regrouping, calling for reinforcements from their ship. She turned to Rock, expecting the blood-frenzied predator described in historical texts, a creature that, once it began killing, couldn't be stopped. Instead, she found the Vorax watching her, its breathing controlled and posture alert but not aggressive. Blood dripped from its claws, yet it made no move toward her. If anything, it seemed to be waiting. "Rack," she whispered, hardly believing what she had witnessed. The Vorax's ears pivoted toward her voice. It moved closer, powerful muscles coiled with latent energy. Maris held her breath as Rack circled her once, sniffing, then positioned itself between her and the sealed door where the raiders had retreated. A protective posture. The realization struck Maris with stunning clarity. Rock wasn't just fighting the intruders. It was defending her. The supposedly mindless predator had made a choice to protect the human who had saved it. The raiders' reinforcements arrived quickly. Explosives detonated against the laboratory door, the reinforced material buckling under the assault. Rock growled, the sound reverberating through Maris's chest as the Vorax tensed for battle. "There are too many," she told it, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words, but hoping somehow to convey the danger. "We need to find another way." As if in response, Rock moved toward the ventilation system, the same one it had studied so carefully during its confinement. With powerful claws, it tore away the cover, revealing a passage large enough for Maris to crawl through, though too small for the Vorax itself. "You want me to escape?" Maris asked, astonished by the creature's apparent reasoning. Rock nudged her toward the opening, then turned back toward the failing door. The message was clear. It would stay and fight while she fled. "I'm not leaving you," Maris decided, moving instead toward her research console. "If we're going to survive this, we need to work together." The laboratory door gave way with a screech of tearing metal. Raiders poured in, weapons ready. Rock met them with savage fury, claws and teeth finding gaps in armor, severing vital connections in their enhanced combat systems. But there were many, and even the mighty Vorax couldn't be everywhere at once. Maris accessed the station's environmental controls through her console, initiating an emergency protocol that flooded the laboratory with dense xenon gas, harmless to most organic life, but effectively neutralizing the Raiders' thermal targeting systems. In the confusion, Rock moved with even greater efficiency, its natural senses unimpaired by the gas. Captain Arxis Moda himself entered the fray, his cybernetic enhancements more extensive than his subordinates. He spotted Maris through the swirling gas, targeting her with a paralysis weapon. "The creature responds to you," he observed coldly. "Surrender, and you both might survive as valuable commodities." Before Maris could respond, Rock dropped from an overhead conduit it had climbed through, landing directly behind the Carisian captain. In one fluid motion, it severed the power supply to his cybernetic systems, rendering his enhanced abilities useless. The captain stumbled, suddenly vulnerable without his technological advantages. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Moda snarled at Maris as he backed away from the advancing Vorax. "That thing isn't protecting you. It's using you. The moment you're no longer valuable, it will turn on you just as it turned on us." "You're wrong," Maris replied, though doubt flickered briefly in her mind. Could she truly be certain of Rock's motivations? The captain lunged for a fallen weapon. Rock moved faster, a blur of midnight skin and gleaming claws. The confrontation ended in seconds, the Carisian leader joining his fallen crew on the laboratory floor. The remaining raiders retreated to their ship, but the damage to the station had been extensive. Fire suppression systems engaged, filling corridors with flame-retardant foam. Life support fluctuated in damaged sectors, and somewhere in the chaos, Tamal and Kaltor were still trapped, along with the rest of the station's personnel. Maris accessed the emergency systems, trying to locate her colleagues. "We need to help the others," she told Rock, though she knew the creature couldn't comprehend the specifics of her concern. To her amazement, the Vorax seemed to understand something of her intent. It moved toward the door, pausing to look back at her, an invitation to follow. Together, they navigated the damaged corridors of Zenora Prime, Rock leading the way with senses far more acute than human perception. They found Tamal trapped beneath collapsed structural components in the medical bay. The Eruvian biologist's eyes widened in terror at the sight of the unrestrained Vorax. "It's okay," Maris assured him, moving to help lift the debris. "Rock is helping us." Tamal's bioluminescent patterns flashed with disbelief. "The Vorax is loose and you named it? Have you lost all scientific objectivity?" "I've gained something more valuable," Maris replied, watching as Rack effortlessly moved a support beam that neither human nor Eruvian could have shifted. "Understanding." With Tamal freed, they continued through the station, locating and rescuing other personnel. The raiders had retreated to their ship but remained in orbit, likely planning another assault once they regrouped. Zenora Prime's communications array had been destroyed, leaving them isolated and vulnerable. "We need to send a distress signal," Kaltor stated, once they had gathered in the relatively intact command center. The Galactic Security Fleet could reach us within 4 hours at maximum speed. The raiders destroyed our long-range communications. Tamal reminded them. Even if we reroute emergency power, we can't reach beyond this system. Maris looked to Rak, who had positioned itself near her, its alert gaze constantly sweeping the room and corridors beyond. An idea formed, one so unorthodox that her scientific training rebelled against it. Yet her instincts urged her forward. "The mining facility," she said. "K-17 has independent communications. If we can reach it, we can call for help." 20 kilometers across open terrain, Zrin noted, mandibles clicking anxiously. "With raiders in orbit tracking our movements?" "Not if we use the maintenance tunnels," Kaltor suggested. "They extend 15 kilometers toward the mining facility, a legacy of the original colonization efforts. We'd only need to cross 5 kilometers on the surface." Maris nodded. "That's our best option." "And the Vorax?" Tamal asked, eyeing Rak with undisguised apprehension. "It can't possibly navigate the tunnels." "Rak stays with me," Maris said firmly. "It's already proven itself more valuable than any security protocol in the station." They gathered essential supplies and emergency equipment, then accessed the maintenance tunnels through a service hatch in the lower levels of the station. The ancient passages were cramped and poorly ventilated, designed for maintenance drones rather than a diverse group of beings, and certainly not for a creature of Rak's size. Yet the Vorax adapted, contorting its powerful body to navigate the restricted space. It moved ahead of the group, senses alert for any danger. Twice it detected structural weaknesses before the team would have blundered into potential cave-ins, allowing Kaltor to reinforce the compromised sections. They emerged from the tunnels as Avaris Omega's weak sun approached its zenith, the red landscape stretching before them to the distant outline of the mining facility. 5 kilometers of exposed terrain lay between them and salvation. "We'll be completely vulnerable," Zrin observed. "The raiders will detect us the moment we leave the tunnel's radiation shielding. Then we move quickly," Maris decided, spread out to minimize targeting effectiveness. They had covered less than 2 kilometers when the attack came. The raiders' ship appeared on the horizon, sweeping toward them with weapon systems engaged. Energy blasts carved furrows in the red soil around them as they scattered, seeking non-existent cover in the barren landscape. Rak remained close to Maris, its body positioned to shield her from the aerial assault. When a blast struck too close, throwing her to the ground, the Vorax lifted her with surprising gentleness, carrying her toward a rock formation that offered minimal protection. The raiders' ship circled back for another attack run. Maris looked at her companions, injured, exposed, with no defense against an armed spacecraft. They had come so close, yet failure seemed inevitable. Then, Rak did something unexpected. It retrieved the emergency pack Kaltor had been carrying, using claws designed for killing to carefully extract components. Maris watched in astonishment as the Vorax assembled the emergency beacon, not activating it, but modifying its power core. "It's creating an electromagnetic pulse," Kaltor realized, his reptilian features expressing rare amazement. "But the range would be minimal, not enough to affect their ship." Rak wasn't finished. It added components from their other equipment, reconfiguring the device with precision that defied explanation. Then it looked at Maris, its intelligent eyes conveying a message she somehow understood. "It needs a power source," she translated. "Something stronger than the emergency cells." Tamal removed his environmental suit's primary power module. "This contains concentrated energy crystals. Will it suffice?" Rak took the offered component, integrating it into the modified beacon. The device hummed with increasing intensity as the raiders' ship began another approach. "Now we need height," Maris realized. "Maximum elevation to extend the pulse range." Zrin pointed to a tall rock spire about 50 meters away. "That formation should provide sufficient altitude." Rak took the device and sprinted toward the spire, its 6 limbs propelling it across the red terrain with astonishing speed. It scaled the rock formation as the Raiders' ship closed in, targeting systems locked on the fleeing group. At the pinnacle, Rock activated the device. A visible wave of energy expanded outward, encompassing the approaching vessel. The ship's systems failed instantly, propulsion and weapons going dark. It plummeted toward the surface, the pilot barely managing to engage emergency landing protocols before impact. The craft skidded across the red soil, coming to rest nearly a kilometer away. Rock returned to the group, its mission accomplished. Together, they covered the remaining distance to the mining facility, where they successfully transmitted a distress call to the Galactic Security Fleet. Within hours, Alliance vessels arrived, securing the crashed Raider ship and rescuing the stranded Zenora Prime personnel. When the Galactic Security Fleet's investigative team arrived, led by Colonel Rhea Sonnen, Maris found herself facing intense scrutiny over Rock's presence. "You deliberately violated containment protocols for an apex predator species," Colonel Sonnen stated during the formal inquiry. "Then, you allowed it unrestricted access throughout the station. These actions directly contradict Alliance safety regulations. Regulations that failed to protect us when we needed it most," Maris countered. "Rock defended the station and its personnel. Without its intervention, we would all be dead or captured. Or perhaps the Raiders targeted your station precisely because of this creature," Sonnen suggested. "Your unauthorized rescue mission created the very danger you claim it helped overcome." The debate continued for hours. Tamal and Kaltor provided testimony supporting Maris's account of Rock's protective behavior. Even Zrin, despite his initial skepticism, confirmed the Vorax had displayed unprecedented reasoning and cooperative capabilities. "The creature appears to have formed a protective bond with Dr. Vale," the Metri security officer explained. "It interprets threats to her as threats to itself." "You're suggesting a predatory species known for its aggression and territorial behavior has developed altruistic tendencies?" Colonel Sonnen asked, incredulously. "I'm stating observed facts," Zrin replied. "The Vorax-designated Rak has repeatedly acted to protect Dr. Vale and, by extension, this facility." Throughout the inquiry, Rock remained in a temporary containment area, though Maris had refused to activate the restraint field. The Vorax stayed calm, watching proceedings through the transparent barrier with evident intelligence. The turning point came when Sonnen attempted to approach Maris during a particularly heated exchange. Rock immediately growled, rising to a defensive posture despite no physical barrier being breached. The warning was clear. It perceived the colonel's aggressive stance as a threat to Maris. "You've weaponized it," Sonnen accused. "Trained it to respond to your commands." "I've done nothing of the sort," Maris replied. "Rock makes its own choices. That's what you're really struggling with, Colonel. The idea that a creature you classified as mindless might have agency and moral capacity." After extensive deliberation, the security fleet reached a surprising conclusion. Invoking the rarely used automatic defense collective precedent, originally established for synthetic security systems, they classified Rak as a legitimate defensive entity, bonded to a specific individual. Maris would retain responsibility for the Vorax, with enhanced monitoring and regular evaluations, but neither would face separation or termination. "This creates a troubling precedent," Colonel Sonnen warned as the decision was announced. "You've introduced an unpredictable variable into our security framework." "Perhaps it's a variable we've been missing," Maris suggested. "Understanding rather than fear, connection rather than control." 6 months later, Maris Vale and Rock had become something of a legend in xenobiological circles. Their paper on reverse predatory protection behavior had revolutionized understanding of Vorax psychology and challenged fundamental assumptions about predator-prey relationships across species. Offers came from research stations throughout Alliance space, many thinly disguising their interest in Rock's defensive capabilities beneath scientific curiosity. The Galactic Alliance established new regulations governing enhanced, sentient xenofauna relationships, attempting to balance security concerns with emerging evidence of complex interspecies bonds. On a quiet evening, as Avaris Omega's sun cast long shadows across the red landscape, Maris sat in her laboratory, reviewing data from their latest behavioral experiments. Rock lounged nearby, its powerful form relaxed, yet ever vigilant. "They still don't fully understand," she told the Vorax, knowing the creature comprehended her tone, if not her specific words. "They see you as an anomaly, an exception that proves the rule. They can't accept that everything they believed about predatory species might be wrong." Rock's intelligent eyes fixed on her, its head tilting slightly in what she had come to recognize as attentiveness. Or maybe what they really fear is discovering that humans, supposedly the vulnerable species in the galactic community, might possess something more powerful than any weapon or technology. She smiled, reaching out to touch the Vorax's midnight skin. The capacity to forge connections across impossible divides, to transform fear into trust, to see beyond appearances to the true nature beneath. Rock rumbled softly. A sound Maris had learned indicated contentment. Outside, the stars began to appear in Avaris Omega's darkening sky. Distant worlds where humans and other species continued to classify, categorize, and control in the name of security. Yet here, in this moment, a different kind of security existed, one built on mutual protection and understanding. The galaxy's most feared predator and a human scientist, united by a single act of compassion that had changed everything, not through dominance or submission, but through recognition of something that transcended evolutionary imperatives and cultural barriers, the universal capacity for connection. As night fell completely over the red plains of Avaris Omega, Maris contemplated the journey that had brought them here, from a desperate creature trapped in a pit to a loyal companion who killed without hesitation to protect her. From a scientist bound by regulations to a pioneer challenging fundamental assumptions about interspecies relationships. Perhaps this was humanity's true strength in the cosmic community. Not physical prowess or technological innovation, but the emotional intelligence to forge bonds where none seemed possible. To see potential where others saw only threat. To offer compassion when logic dictated caution. Rock shifted position, moving to stand at the viewport beside her. Together, predator and rescuer. They gazed at the stars, a silent testament to possibilities yet undiscovered in the vast expanse of space. The red dust of Avaris Omega swirled in the night breeze, carrying whispers of a new understanding that would, in time, transform the galaxy's perception of what it meant to be predator and prey, protector and protected. A single act of compassion had created a bond stronger than any restraint field or containment protocol, a bond that would continue to challenge assumptions and expand possibilities long after the red sun rose again on their shared horizon. In the aftermath of the Coresian raider attack, the story of Maris Vale and her Vorax companion spread throughout Alliance space, becoming equal parts cautionary tale and inspiration. Research stations began re-evaluating their approach to supposedly dangerous species, questioning whether the rigid classifications had limited scientific understanding rather than enhancing security. The Zenora Prime incident prompted the Galactic Alliance to establish a new research division dedicated to interspecies bonding, with Maris appointed as its lead scientist. Her methodology, emphasizing connection rather than containment, faced significant resistance from traditional xenobiologists, but the results were undeniable. Species previously deemed too dangerous for study revealed complex social structures and cognitive abilities when approached with Maris's techniques. Rock remained a constant presence in her work, its behavior continuing to evolve in ways that defied conventional understanding of predatory species. It learned to manipulate simple tools, communicate through a system of gestures and vocalizations, and even collaborate with other researchers. though it maintained its protective stance toward Maris, tolerating others only in her presence. The bond isn't about domestication, Maris explained during a symposium at the Alliance Science Academy. It's about mutual recognition. Rock doesn't serve me, nor do I control it. We've established a relationship based on respect and shared experience. But the creature kills for you, one skeptical administrator pointed out. How is that not a form of control? Rock makes choices, Maris corrected. During the attack, it chose to protect not just me, but everyone at the station. It assessed threats and responded proportionally. That's not mindless obedience. It's cooperation between intelligent beings. As their work progressed, Maris began to understand that what had happened in that pit on Avaris Omega was more significant than a simple rescue. She had encountered Rock at its most vulnerable, offering help when its experiences would have predicted only threat. That moment of unexpected compassion had created a cognitive dissonance for the Predator, a disruption in its understanding of interspecies relationships that allowed for new neural pathways to form. The implications extended far beyond a single Vorax. If apex predators across the galaxy possessed similar capacity for relationship and moral reasoning, the entire framework of xenobiological management needed reconsideration. Maris's research began to suggest that predatory behavior wasn't simply a fixed evolutionary trait, but a complex expression of environmental adaptation and experience, one that could be redirected through meaningful connection. Not everyone welcomed these developments. Security agencies throughout Alliance space viewed the Vorax precedent with alarm, concerned about the potential weaponization of predatory species. Black market interest in Vorax specimens increased, despite enhanced enforcement efforts, and religious groups on multiple worlds decried the unnatural bonding between species designed to be adversaries. Through it all, Maris and Rock continued their work, each new discovery expanding the boundaries of interspecies understanding. When a diplomatic crisis erupted between the Alliance and the reclusive Thraxi Confederation, it was Maris who proposed an unprecedented solution, one that would test everything they had learned. The Thraxi evolved from prey species, she explained to the Alliance Council. Their entire cultural framework is built on detecting and avoiding threats. Our traditional diplomatic approaches register as predatory behavior to their sensory systems. What do you suggest? Asked the council chair, expression skeptical. Let me approach them with Rock, Maris proposed. Show them that even natural enemies can form productive relationships. If a human and a Vorax can establish trust, perhaps the Thraxi can believe in the possibility of genuine alliance with us. The mission was controversial, yet ultimately authorized as conventional diplomacy continued to fail. Maris and Rock traveled to the buffer zone between Alliance and Thraxi space, where representatives of the reclusive species had agreed to a preliminary meeting. The Thraxi diplomats reacted with predictable alarm at Rock's presence, their sensory frills extending in fear response. Yet, as they observed the interaction between human and predator, the easy communication, the mutual respect, the absence of dominance behaviors, their scientific curiosity gradually overcame instinctive caution. You control this, Hunter? The lead Thraxi diplomat asked, multifaceted eyes fixed on Rock. No, Maris replied. We've chosen to respect each other. There is no control, only cooperation. Impossible, another Thraxi insisted. Predator-prey relationships are fixed by evolutionary imperative. Yet, here we are, Maris said simply, gesturing to the space between herself and Rock. Evidence that biology isn't destiny. That choice exists even within the framework of instinct. The diplomatic breakthrough that followed revolutionized Alliance-Thraxi relations, establishing a framework for cooperation based on mutual vulnerability rather than strength projection. More significantly, it validated Maris's approach on an interstellar scale, demonstrating that the principles discovered with Rock could transform even the most entrenched adversarial relationships. Upon their return, Maris found herself elevated from controversial researcher to visionary diplomat. The Alliance Council authorized expanded funding for her interspecies communication program, with applications extending beyond scientific research into conflict resolution and cultural exchange. Yet, with recognition came renewed danger. Extremist groups opposed to interspecies integration targeted Maris's research facilities. Corporate interests sought to monetize the techniques she had developed, reducing complex relationship building to simplified training protocols that missed the essential element of mutual respect. Through each challenge, Rock remained her constant companion, its protective instincts never diminishing, yet evolving into more nuanced responses. The Vorax had developed a sophisticated understanding of threat assessment, distinguishing between genuine danger and mere disagreement, between those who wished Maris harm and those who simply opposed her ideas. On the 10th anniversary of their first encounter, Maris returned with Rock to Avaris Omega. The planet had changed. A thriving research complex now stood where Zenora Prime had once been the sole outpost. Scientists from across the Alliance studied the unique properties of the planet's mineral composition. But a section had been preserved as a historical site, the pit where a human had found a predator and changed the course of interstellar relations. Standing at the edge of that pit, now carefully maintained as a monument, Maris reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple choice: to help rather than harm, to rescue rather than destroy. "They still don't fully understand," she told Rock, who stood beside her, midnight skin gleaming in the red sunlight. "They've built monuments and established protocols, created training programs and diplomatic frameworks. But in the end, it all began with the simplest thing: seeing you not as what everyone said you were, but as what you could be." Rock rumbled softly, a sound that Maris had long ago learned to interpret as agreement. After a decade together, their communication had evolved into something neither human language nor Vorax vocalizations could fully capture. A shared understanding built on thousands of moments of mutual trust and protection. As they turned away from the pit, heading back toward their transport, Maris caught sight of a group of young researchers watching them with undisguised fascination. The next generation of xenobiologists, raised on stories of the human who found a predator trapped in a pit and forged a bond that defied conventional wisdom. "Dr. Vale," one of them called out, voice hesitant but determined, "is it true that you knew from the beginning that the Vorax would protect you? That you saw something in it that others missed?" Maris smiled, glancing at Rock before answering. "What I saw was possibility," she replied. "Not certainty, not guarantee, just possibility. Sometimes that's enough to change everything." As they continued on their way, Rock moving with the fluid grace that had once made its species the most feared predators in the galaxy, Maris reflected on the legacy they had created together, not through conquest or dominance, not through submission or control, but through the recognition that across the vast distances of space and the greater gulfs of evolutionary divergence, connection remained possible, and within that connection lay the true strength of sentient life. The predator that had once been trapped in a pit now moved freely among the stars, killing without hesitation to protect the human who had freed it. Yes, but also teaching a lesson more powerful than any weapon: that compassion could transform even the most entrenched patterns of existence, creating new possibilities where none had seemed to exist before. And in a galaxy filled with beings seeking advantages over one another, perhaps that was the most revolutionary discovery of all. The red dust of Avaris Omega swirled around them as they walked away from the monument. Predator and rescuer together, not as master and servant, not as controller and weapon, but as companions who had chosen each other against all probability and expectation. Behind them, the pit remained as testimony to a moment of choice. Before them stretched a future still being written, one relationship at a time, across the endless stars.